He was first an electric engineer. Now he is the Minister of Commerce in the government of Pakistan. This evening joining me is Mr. Khurram Dastagir Khan, the Minister of Commerce of the government of Pakistan. A very good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Nice to have you on board as well, Minister. Starting off, what is the purpose of your visit to Sri Lanka?
Well, the purpose stems from His Excellency, the Sri Lankan President's visit to Islamabad earlier this year, in which I called on him and indicated that Sri Lanka was the first country with which Pakistan signed a free trade agreement, an indication of our very close relationship. But since the free trade agreement is 10 years old and had reached a plateau after which we hadn't seen the kind of growth that is required to keep an economic engagement in healthy shape. So we agreed that I will visit Sri Lanka and start the process of discussion on a deepening and widening of the free trade agreement. So that's the main purpose of the visit.
You met several ministers attached to the government, which was appointed on the 17th of August 2015. What were the outcomes of these meetings, Minister?
Well, I met the Minister for Industries, of course, and Commerce, Mr. Rashad Batiuddin. I met the Minister for Public Administration, Minister Bandara. I also met the Minister for Megapolis and Western Development, Mr. Rana Waka. Because it's no longer just, when you come in terms of economic engagement, it's just not just trade in goods. It's also investment and it's also connectivity. So we have to, take the classic 21st century economic relationship has to work simultaneously on all three fronts. So that's why I met the three ministers, and on many areas, I mean, there's a intense interest in Sri Lanka to attract Pakistani investment, for example, in cement and sugar manufacturing. So we discussed that and see what kind of mechanism could be adopted to make it happen here. Similarly, we discussed with ministers how we could take business delegations from Sri Lanka to Pakistan, so they could explore the Pakistani market more thoroughly. A discussion that I had with the Honorable Prime Minister also this morning is how to mutually agree on a process to issue visas more efficiently to business people, so they could visit more often, issue longer term visas, issue multiple entry visas. So all these topics of investment and better connectivity, people to people contact came into focus, and I think we hope to have substantive outcomes when we expect Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif of Pakistan to visit Sri Lanka early in 2016.
Minister, there was a change in Sri Lanka in terms of politics. So we saw on the 8th of January this year, a new president was elected. On the 17th of August, a coalition government was elected by the people of this country. How do you envisage the change that was adopted in the country in terms of relations between both nations, Pakistan and Sri Lanka, economically and also politically?
Well, I think, again, of course, we respect the wishes of the people of Sri Lanka to elect whoever they see fit as their government. But the positive aspect that I've noted in my term in office is that the relationship between Pakistan and Sri Lanka, this friendship between our two countries, is deep enough to go beyond individual administrations. That there is a history of cooperation. We have been building on it, and now there's a deep enough well of friendship that we don't have to really worry about who is in government in Pakistan or in Sri Lanka to take the relationship forward. So we welcome the new government, and it's taking certain steps. We note that it's taken a while since January for the Sri Lankan Prime Minister to announce what he calls the next generation of economic reforms. We are watching it with interest. And as these reforms come on the ground, I think Pakistan's economic engagement with Sri Lanka will increase. And vice versa, we hope that Sri Lanka's engagement with Pakistan will increase.
Following the 8th of January elections, the first overseas visit undertaken by the President was India. The Prime Minister, after taking office on the 17th of August, first overseas visit was to India. Does that worry your government?
No, I think we have the 21st century and 70 years after Pakistan's independence, we have to have a larger sense of where the region is going. And we believe it's no longer a zero-sum game between India and Pakistan about who visits whom first. And as I said, between Pakistan and Sri Lanka, there is now this deep well of shared history and friendship that I believe we can go forward. We don't see, we welcome the visit. I think we should all have, if you recall, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif took a very unprecedented step of visiting India with the rest of the regional leadership and for the oath-taking of Prime Minister Modi. This was unheard of. But I think it was a clear indication, that statesman-like gesture was a clear indication of Pakistan's desire that we have to now go beyond this very, what has now become, I think, a knee-jerk hostility. We have to go beyond this and see each other more as partners than to be trapped forever in a hostile stand.
Pakistan is the second largest trading partner in terms of the SAARC countries for Sri Lanka. Are you worried that Sri Lanka might be a possible threat to Pakistan's trade within the SAARC region?
No, I think we're very clear on that. And what we intend to do, Pakistan and Sri Lanka, is to grow prosperous together. It's our quest, of course, and if I might summarize my visit in a single sentence, is to achieve a shared prosperity with Sri Lanka through better economic integration.
You spoke of free trade agreements and how you championed the cause of free trade agreements, and 10 years ago Sri Lanka and Pakistan signed free trade agreement as well. Now Sri Lanka is looking at bringing progressive tax on certain goods. Would this affect imports of goods from other countries, considering Sri Lanka, Pakistan currently has an FTA in operation? And what is your opinion on the progressive tax that would be imposed by the present regime, even when the budget
I
comes
think
through?
The present regime, as it goes through the reforms, will realize that when we concluded our free trade agreement 10 years ago, in 2005, the number of free trade agreements around the world was still quite limited. And in fact, the last decade has seen this explosion, literally, of free trade agreements. The countries which used to have 2 or 3 agreements now have done 24 free trade agreements. And what has happened is that in many of these cases, and something we will be discussing with Sri Lanka in our negotiations toward, as I said, towards a widening and deepening of free trade agreement, is that what we call in trade terms the margins of preference that we gave to each other in the free trade agreement a decade ago, because of the free trade agreements that have happened around us, or our partners have done free trade agreements among themselves, those margins of preference have eroded. So 10 years ago, if Pakistan had given, or Sri Lanka had given to Pakistan a certain margin on one item, because Sri Lanka has concluded other free trade agreements, Pakistan has concluded other free trade agreements, or Pakistan and Sri Lanka independently might have done a free trade agreement with a third country, the margins of preference have eroded. They have become less, and no longer the kind of concession that existed 10 years ago. So it has to be looked anew, and we are quite certain that if any issues that arise, we will be able to discuss this very openly and candidly with the Sri Lankan government and resolve this.
Looked anew. So your purpose of a visit also focuses on looking at the FTA in a new look, in a new version, in a new facelift. Is that what you're trying to say, Minister?
Yes, I'm saying that we need to see that the kinds of concessions that we offer to each other might have become obsolete, or the maximum in the current state of our economies, respective economies, Pakistan and Sri Lanka, we might have exhausted the possibilities in that preference. So we need to perhaps offer greater concessions. Perhaps we need to, in certain sectors, broaden the list in which we offer concessions. In certain items, we offered what are called quotas that certain countries could only export this much amount in 1 year to each other. Perhaps the quotas are obsolete because.
What is the way forward, Minister? If this
So
is
the way forward is really, I think, is beyond, I think, individual haggling over certain items or taxes, is to see the possibilities of a deeper engagement and friendship between Pakistan and Sri Lanka, and to really open up each other's markets for each other. I think that's to really establish a long-term relationship and to encourage our businesses to give priority to each other's countries and to engage as people, as economic partners, and as regional partners.
Many argue, Minister, that Sri Lanka's narrow product portfolio is a reason for our poor trade levels. How do you think Sri Lanka should capitalize on its products in the export arena and ensure that we export the correct goods and probably vasten this product portfolio? How do you think that Sri Lanka should do? What must we do?
That brings a smile to my face, because precisely the same thing is said about Pakistan. Pakistan's export base still is quite narrow and quite limited, which brings us, of course, to the natural conclusion that Sri Lanka and Pakistan have strengths in different sectors, and therefore, if we open up to each other substantively, there is a tremendous scope for joint ventures. And to also, I think, as something that has become very important very recently, just in this year, is to open doors for each other in each other's region. Pakistan can open doors for Sri Lanka towards Central Asia, towards western part of China, through our ports of Karachi and Gwadar very soon. And similarly, Sri Lanka, because of its particular location, can open doors for Pakistan towards East Asia. So there is this, I think, very positive and very fruitful possibility of opening doors for each other that exists. And again, an area which would push us even closer than we have been.
Minister, you played a pivotal role in terms of obtaining the GSP Plus concession for Pakistan from the European Union. Sri Lanka had the GSP Plus before. We lost it due to political reasons, and we are also now pitching to get the GSP Plus concession again. What is your message to the present regime in order to obtain the GSP Plus concession successfully?
Well, you see, GSP, I think for the benefit of your viewers, the new GSP Plus that European Union has instituted, the real name is, it is a special incentive for sustainable development and good governance. And that is the spirit in which it has to be seen. Because the European Union now requires countries who want to go into GSP Plus to, first of all, sign up to 27 UN conventions on human rights, women's rights, minority rights, health and safety regulations, conventions against torture, all other issues. And not only the European Union is requiring that you sign those, is that you have to show progress in complying with those conventions. So it will require legislation, and since we have been in GSP Plus for 2 years now, it's been quite a challenge for Pakistan, because we did, sign up to the 27 conventions before 2014, but since then we've had to create new institutional structures to be able to bring together the kind of administrative competence so that we could report properly to the European Union that we are making progress. And also at the same time, I would suggest very strongly, and something that I speak to Pakistan's business sector, that we should not see these as an imposition or a burden or a cost. These are the rights that are enshrined in the Sri Lankan constitution, that we have, they are enshrined in the Pakistani constitution, is simply to raise the quality of life of our citizens. That's what they stand up for. So we should see them in that spirit, and I believe that if Sri Lanka now, in its more consolidated democracy that it has achieved, will be able to, and we hope, join GSP+.
Minister, in a people's perspective, won't this infringe the sovereignty of the country, interference by international forces, by signing on these conventions?
Yes, again, I would, this is a question that is raised constantly in Pakistan. This is raised constantly by observers, foreign policy experts. But I see it again in the spirit that this is something, for example, that when I read through the conventions, they say the same thing that are written in my party's manifesto, that we will treat women equally and well, we will treat minorities well, that we will not torture our people. So it is in that spirit.
I'm talking about interference by international forces, like the Western world.
You see, I think, again, I will refer back to what I said earlier, that ultimately GSP Plus is an incentive, not a reward.
Minister, we saw a few years ago US forces coming into Pakistan and killing one of the world's ruthless terrorists, Osama bin Laden, and Pakistan did not even know. Would something like that happen if you sign these conventions in question?
I don't think so at all. And I think
what happened there?
Yes, it was an unfortunate incident and caused a challenge to Pakistan's security. But the fact is that those kind of incidents have nothing whatsoever to do with GSP+. And also interestingly, I think if we are talking about GSP+, is that the countries of Europe together are asking you to treat your people well. They're not asking you for any foreign policy quid pro quo. They're not asking for military bases or forces to be deployed.
But we know Pakistan has several bases, several foreign bases established in their country.
No longer.
No longer in your country. However, we know there has been several instances in which many Western countries have tried to infringe upon the sovereignty of certain countries. I think Pakistan was also a victim, which I referred to before in terms of Osama bin Laden's death. You said that there was a threat to national level security in our country as well. My question is, would something like this happen in a country like Sri Lanka?
I would very strongly say that we dissociate these kind of intrusions with trade concessions. And if any country suggests that in return for trade concessions, they would get these rights, Pakistan would reject it, and I'm certain Sri Lanka would reject it categorically and unambiguously.
You spoke about good governance. Is there good governance in Sri Lanka following the 8th of January this year?
No, I would not hazard a comment on that, but I do hope again that Sri Lanka, while in eyes of many might not be perfect, but it has made good progress.
Minister, you are also spearheading the operations in terms of privatization in your country. You were part of the Ministry of Science and Technology and the Ministry of Privatization, as well as chairman
of
the Privatization Commission as well.
Yes.
Privatization in a developing country, in almost a developed country, middle-income country, is a taboo word. Privatization in Pakistan is a taboo word?
For many, yes. But it's something that has to be done. Because you see, the arguments that are raised against privatization are simply in terms of the employees of those institutions. And while we want to protect their rights, but ultimately the cost to the whole nation has to be calculated. Pakistan is a nation of now anywhere between 180 and 200 million. So can we hold 200 million people hostage to protect 20,000 people? And it's also, I think, when public institutions, particularly state-owned enterprises, and I noticed that Prime Minister Wickremesinghe mentioned them very prominently in his reform speech, is that when state institutions do not perform well, are inefficient, they are also a drain on national confidence and the trust on the government.
So privatization should be in the cards of the present regime?
Yes, I think it has to be. I think it has to be handled intelligently. You need not sell the whole thing. But a change in management So you could have a change in management without selling the whole of the public ownership. So I think it's very much for Sri Lanka to decide what nature and what kind of reform structure is put in. But I think in many, privatization is not the answer for every problem, but for many problems it is the answer.
India's economy has grown significantly over the last 1 year. Does this concern SAARC countries, Minister?
It shouldn't. And I think what it does is that it imposes an extra responsibility on India to open itself up and to go beyond, I said, narrow and I would say outmoded notions of national superiority, to take the region along, to take the region as a partner in its prosperity. Because you see, if you look at India's size and India's import and export numbers, Pakistan's exports and imports to India, Sri Lanka's import and exports to India, they're a tiny percentage. They're really, I mean, compared to the Indian size, it's very small. So if India wanted to really act as a anchor for the region, it would behave differently than it has been done.
India's involvement in the Sri Lanka's economy, Minister, you've seen the fact that many projects have been undertaken by the Indian government, especially after Narendra Modi came into play in the Indian political arena as the Prime Minister of the country. What is the involvement that Pakistan would have in terms of Sri Lanka's economy, Sri Lanka's forward march economically in the next few years?
I would use the word contribution. As I said, we would like Pakistan and Sri Lanka to grow prosperous together, for our people to have a better quality of life together through our shared economic engagement.
Minister, during the Prime Minister's visit to India, his first visit to India, I was also able to accompany the Prime Minister's media delegation. The Prime Minister pledged that Sri Lanka would support a seat at the UN Security Council for India. Now, does this statement in any way concern your cabinet, your government, which is now in power in Pakistan?
Well, we have taken a clear stance, but at the same time, we respect Sri Lanka's decision. Sri Lanka is, of course, a dear friend and partner to Pakistan. But of course, we also respect Sri Lanka's sovereignty as a nation. And so therefore, they are able to, I think, again, as I said, there is now a deep enough well, I'm having to say this again anyway, it's very important to repeat, deep enough well of friendship between our two nations, that we should be able to go beyond these individual decisions that each country is making. Pakistan might occasionally take decisions that Sri Lankan government.
Is your country campaigning for a Security Council seat at the United Nations?
Not to my knowledge. If I was
Sri Lanka has only one vote, Minister, and either it votes for Pakistan or either it votes for India. So already a pledge has been made by the Prime Minister.
I'm not too sure that we are campaigning for a seat now at the moment.
Minister, an electrical engineer to a Minister of Commerce, what's the change, sudden change of your studies, education?
Well, I also have a degree in economics. I think if
you do have a degree in economics.
I do have a degree in economics, and it's just that family circumstances pushed me into politics. And
are you enjoying it, Minister? Because you were there in 1999 as well, somewhat in politics when there was a coup in your country.
I had just been appointed as special assistant again to Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who is my Prime Minister again now, and we suffered a great deal under the military rule. But I think again it was a learning experience, and one, I think again Sri Lankan people of Sri Lanka also have a sense of this, that it's only when you lose your liberties as citizens that you realize how important they are and how important democracy is. We like to criticize democracy and castigate it as being too messy or, to use the word, corrupt. The truth is that it is the best guarantee of citizens having the rights to live their lives properly and having their beliefs, their religious beliefs, their political beliefs respected. And it's only actually through the sustenance of democracy, which requires a lot of hard work and commitment, that ultimately our citizens will be able to achieve the life that they desire individually.
You were the special assistant to the Prime Minister in the October 1999 coup. What really happened, Minister, at that time? People would want to know what exactly happened. He went overseas and came back and realized that he does not have his seat anymore. Is that what happened?
No, again, I would not hazard in those choppy waters. Suffice to say that I was in my home district that day. In fact, being congratulated for being appointed special assistant. Then suddenly we are told that a military coup has taken place. And then I was put under house arrest. My family and my father, we were all under house arrest for nearly a week. And then we were let go and we started opposing the regime until the people of Pakistan in the 2008 election decisively routed the authoritarian forces, and we were able to get rid of our dictatorship.
Get rid of your dictatorship. Is that what happened in Sri Lanka as well, Minister?
Again, you see, I'm not an expert on Sri Lankan
What is
politics.
the way forward? What is the way forward?
The way forward is, I think it's actually what democracy does is it tests our beliefs every single day and our ability and commitment to abide by them. It tests your beliefs and your commitment to your people and how one is better able to serve them. I've had the greatest honor a citizen can have, which is to represent your fellow citizens. And I've represented my fellow citizens for 7 years now, since 2008. And I think it tests your commitment. You cannot take democracy for granted. And I think it's something that people of Sri Lanka, like people of Pakistan, there's tremendous criticism of democracy in Pakistan. And people are always saying, what has it delivered? What has it given to the people? But it's our, in fact, self-respect as a nation and self-respect as individual citizens that should continuously fortify our commitment to democracy. And as I said, that if there is bad governance, it's not an argument against democracy, it is an argument against the government. And of course, the right of people to change it when next time they go to the polls.
Minister, what lessons can you learn from the Sri Lankan defeat of terrorism, what took place in 2009? Is there any lessons that can be learned from the Sri Lankan experience in terms of fighting terrorism in your country?
Well, what we have learned from Sri Lanka and what we have learned in Pakistan, what was said many hundreds of years ago was Thomas Jefferson, that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. We cannot allow our liberty to slowly be taken away, and to confront those people who threaten to take away our liberties. We cannot be, not for a moment, not be vigilant. It's important that anyone who tries to use violence as a tool for their political ideals, anyone who wants to use violence to upend the constitution and elected institutions, it's for us, and it's not by the force of arms alone that we defeat these people. It's our commitment as a people and as citizens to these elected institutions, however inefficient or corrupt they might be. That, that's why it tests our commitment. That authoritarianism, we should be very clear, is not the answer.
Thank you very much, Minister, for joining us right here on Newsfirst in Focus. Pleasure to have you on board today on our show.
Always a pleasure.